Temple stays are popular among foreigners recently. What is temple stay? Why is it popular? Temple stay is a popular cultural experience program for foreigners in Korea. This program helps foreigners to understand Korean Buddhism better. When they experience a temple stay, they get to know the temple's history, tradition, and the typical routines of monks. There is a one-day program and multi-day program for temple stays. Depending on their time and schedule, they can choose whatever they want to do in their temple stay. Buddhism is quite unique to other foreigners, especially from Western countries. People tend to enjoy experiencing aspects of culture that are different from their own home country. Temple stay is good for taking a peaceful rest and experiencing meditation, which helps to release their stress. Temple stays include various types of practices that foreigners can experience, such as 예불, 참선, 다도, and 파루 공연. 예불 means the ceremony that is being conducted in a temple. 참선 is meditation. 다도 means tea ceremony. 파루 공연 is the temple's meal service. These are the four main programs that are included in the temple stay. Temples are normally surrounded by beautiful nature, so participants can enjoy a nice landscape even in Seoul. The famous temples in Seoul for temple stays are Gilsangsa, Jogesa, and Bonggeunsa. There are several famous palace cuisines from the Joseon dynasty in Korea. Can you list some of the palace cuisines and their unique qualities? Here are some differences between royal cuisine and ordinary food. Royal cuisine is literally the food cooked in a royal court during the Joseon dynasty. So it's quite different from ordinary Korean food. First, it's less salty and spicy, except dishes containing kimchi. It's quite a big difference since Koreans generally enjoyed spicy food during this period. The main well-known cuisines are mung bean jelly salad, marinated grilled beef slices, brass chafing dish, platter of 9 delicacies, pine mushroom skewer, Korean-style raw beef, and braised jumbo shrimp. Lastly, the name of each dish is different. For example, we call rice pap, but in the court, it is called sura. Salad is namul, but it is called sukche in court. Can you introduce several traditional Korean alcohol? How is it fermented? Describe the colors and flavors. Makgeolli is one of Korea's representatives for traditional alcohols. It was made by mixing steamed rice or yeast called duruk and water until it becomes fermented. Like all fermented food, makgeolli also contains a lot of lactic acid bacteria and dietary fiber. Its original color is milky and opaque with around 5% alcohol content. It is not that strong compared to other alcohol, but it is sweet and smooth and also a little tangy. These days, a lot of makgeolli companies release makgeolli with various flavors such as citron, ginseng, strawberry, honey, and etc. I think that soju is the most popular alcohol in Korea because of its price. One bottle of soju is around 1,000 won. If you drink at the bar, it's more expensive. Compared to beer, the alcohol content of soju is high and can make you drunk easily. So people like to mix it with juice, Sprite, or beer. Beer is called 맥주 in Korean. So mixing soju and 맥주 becomes somek. This is one of the most popular forms of mixed drinks in Korea. Among the different types of soju, Andong soju has relatively high alcohol content at around 45%. There are packed soju for foreign visitors to take with them back to their countries. That's another recommended souvenir. Bukpunda is a name of a Korean-style raspberry. This wine is normally popular among girls because of its sweet and fruity taste. It is made from fermented raspberry and mixed with alcohol. I usually recommend this to those who like sweet liquor. Personally, I like this wine the best among other Korean drinks. Do you know how to make kimchi? In what ways is it good for your health? It is easy to find fermented food on the Korean dinner table. One fermented dish is kimchi. Kimchi is one of the healthiest foods in the world. Kimchi is a side dish made with pickled cabbage or radish. Pickled cabbage and radish is seasoned with chili, onion, garlic, ginger, and sometimes seafood like oysters and salted fish. The longer it ferments, the better the taste becomes. It is extremely nutritious and is abundant with vitamins and minerals. It enhances the human immune system and is known widely as an anti-cancerous food. Thus, it was designated as UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2013. Many Korean people eat kimchi almost every day, and some people cannot live even a day without kimchi. Foreigners think kimchi is spicy. It is spicy, but also addictive. There are other kinds of kimchi such as baek kimchi. Baek means white in Korean. It is made using a recipe similar to that of original kimchi, except the pepper powders are exempt. So, if you don't want to try spicy kimchi, I recommend baek kimchi. I will tell you how to make kimchi. Making kimchi is called kimjang. First, cut the cabbages in half, then soak them in salt water until they become pickled. You can also put radish in if you'd like. Coat the cabbage with the prepared sauce, which will fill every nook and cranny with seasoning. Then, put all of the cabbage into a jar and store them in the refrigerator for around a week. Usually, red pepper powder, salted anchovy sauce, salted shrimp sauce, and crushed garlic are used as seasoning. Tell me about Korean ginseng. Ginseng is a kind of slow-growing perennial plant with roots. It tastes bitter and strong. It is shaped like a human body. Korean ginseng is distinctively more popular than any other countries because it contains ginsenoside, which is only found in Korean ginseng. Ginsenoside is the saponin in ginseng. It is also known to boost the immune system and prevent cancer. The more its shape looks like the human body, the more effective it is. So, Korean ginseng is quite a popular shopping item for foreigners. Ginseng-infused tea and liquor are also popular among foreigners as souvenirs. If you want to buy a simple gift for your friends, there are ginseng jelly and candies too. Korean food, hanshik, is receiving widespread support throughout the world. Do you know about the globalization of hanshik? Compared to the past, people's recognition of hanshik, Korean food, has increased a lot. Hanshik is known to be a healthy, clean food and helps people lose weight. Also, it tastes really good. I suggest 2 ways to globalize hanshik around the world. First, we need to make a lot of content related to hanshik. World Hanshik Festival was held in 2016 to spread the uniqueness of Korean food to everyone. It received great feedback and participants showed high satisfaction in the content made. So holding events, festivals, and even small but unique gatherings with the theme of hanshik will help globalize hanshik. These days, online platforms such as YouTube are very popular, and we can easily find various videos about Korean food. Creating content needs to be continued from now on. Second, localization is very important. Revise the recipe of the original Korean dish to adapt well to the target market. No matter how delicious the food is to us, if it does not appeal to other countries' appetite, then it cannot excel. So, we always need to think of localization. I hope many people in the world can experience the greatness of Korean food. Could you tell us about halal food? Halal refers to permitted in Arabic. Halal food specifically means prepared appropriately for human consumption. In other words, the food that is permitted to be eaten under Islamic law. Goat meat, chicken, and beef that are slaughtered properly under this law are only allowed to be eaten. The opposite meaning term of halal is haram, which means forbidden. Halal food is consumed globally, and Muslim travelers are increasing every year. Its market is growing more and more in the global food industry. My opinion on this industry is that if we create a halal food complex in Korea, it will bring a positive impact on economic profits. But we need to think about religious and cultural conflicts that might occur in our society too. Could you talk about bibimbap? Do you know how to make it? Are you looking for both a nutritious and a delicious food in Korea? Then I highly recommend bibimbap. Bibim means mix, and bap means rice in Korean. So it's literally mixed rice with lots of vegetables and meat. Not only is there beef bibimbap, but there are various kinds of bibimbap depending on what you put inside. If you put beef inside the dish, it becomes beef bibimbap. If you put oyster inside the dish, then it's oyster bibimbap. To make bibimbap, you mix the rice, vegetables, chili pepper paste, soy sauce, or soybean paste thoroughly and put a fried egg on top. These are the most common ingredients that you can find easily in the restaurant. According to CNN Travel, it was listed at number 40 on the world's 50th most delicious foods. Jeongju, which is located in Jeollado province of Korea, is the area that is most famous for bibimbap. So when you travel to Jeonju, make sure to try Jeonju-style bibimbap. Could you tell us about Burugogi? Do you know how to make it? Burugogi is one of the most popular Korean meat dishes for both foreigners and locals. It won't satisfy vegan travelers, but most people love the taste of bulgogi, and we can make various different dishes with bulgogi, such as sandwiches, pizza, and pasta. The special sauce is the key secret to making bulgogi. To make bulgogi, you need to marinate the beef in a sauce made with soy sauce, finely chopped onions, minced garlic, salt, sugar, and black pepper. Depending on your preference, you can either make it with pork or chicken. But beef bulgogi is typical. Bulgogi has always been loved by people. Let me share my own recipe with you. Prepare green onions and cut them into pieces. Make a marinade with sliced onions, green onions, minced garlic, sesame oil, black pepper, salt, and sugar, and mix it thoroughly. Marinate the sliced meat inside the marinade and keep it in the fridge for around 4 hours. Cook in a frying pan for around 10 minutes until it is cooked. Serve it on a plate and eat. The excellence of the Korean writing system, known as Hangul, is well known all over the world. Do you know any tourist attractions in Seoul that show the excellence of Hangul? Hangul, the Korean alphabet, was created by King Sejong of the Joseon dynasty. Before that, Koreans used Chinese characters, which was very complicated and difficult to learn. Thanks to King Sejong's great achievements, people could learn the Korean alphabet very easily. Hangul's consonants were created based on the articulators of the human vocal organs, such as the shape of the tongue, throat, and lips. Because of this reason, you can write almost any language in the world with Hangul. The vowels, however, contain philosophical meanings like heaven, earth, and human. Hangul is so easy to learn and use that the illiteracy rate of Koreans is less than 1%, whereas in China it is more than 3%. So Hangul is said to be the most scientific and creative letter and writing system in the world. These days, more and more people are becoming interested in learning Korean. For those who would like to know more about Hangul, you can visit the National Hangul Museum in Yongsan, Seoul. This museum is open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and it's also free. The museum explains the history of Hangul and creative movement of Hangul, and even the globalization of Hangul. Other special exhibitions are held from time to time. Do you know about CALT? What kinds of services does it offer? CALT stands for City, Airport, Logistics, and Travel. The company is located in Samsang-dong, Seoul, and provides a fast and convenient off-site check-in airport service. To use the service, you can go to the CALT building, check in your baggage, and arrange seating with your airline. It is quick and easy. Then you can take a break and visit the on-site immigration office. After that, you can buy your tickets and take the airport limousine bus, which goes directly to Gimpo and Incheon Airport. It's very fast and convenient. At the airport, COUT passengers have the privilege of using the same entrance as diplomats and flight crew. What does DDP stand for? Please explain. DDP stands for Dongdaemun Design Plaza. It is a multicultural complex located at Dongdaemun History and Culture Park Station in Seoul. It was established in 2014 with the slogan Dream, Design, Play to offer a platform for new design trends and culture. Diverse cultural and fashion events such as exhibitions, fashion shows, product launches, education programs, and forums are held almost daily. One great thing about this place is the shape of the building. It looks quite like the landscape of Korea when looking from the air. I heard it is one of the world's largest three-dimensional architectural structures. I hope the DDP can be a hub for the design and fashion industry and expands throughout the world. Please tell us about Bukchon Hanok Village. Bukchon Hanok Village is surrounded by Gyeongbokgung Palace, Chengdukung Palace, and the Jongmyo Royal Shrine. In Bukchon Village, you can see countless hanok, which are traditional Korean houses, densely packed together. They are still used as homes. When Korea underwent industrialization, the government moved these hanok to this area because they had to use a lot of the land for economic development. Many hanok were destroyed and rebuilt here to form this village. This is why the village was created with the hanok built close together. You can enjoy both traditional and modernized hanok styles. Some of these hanok have been converted to coffee shops, restaurants, and guest houses for tourists. Thanks to the atmosphere created by the beautiful hanok, this area became a famous location for dates and wedding photos. Please tell us about Nuriangdin Fish Market. The vibrant Nuriangdin Fish Market is the largest seafood market in Seoul. It is open 24 hours a day all year round. Seafood auctions are held in the morning. During this time, you can see various kinds of seafood. The whole market is 2 stories. On the first floor, you can buy seafood and fish from vendors. Then, you can take your items to the second floor where a restaurant will cook it for you. Side dishes and soups are also served to eat with the seafood you bought downstairs. You can eat it raw or have it cooked, depending on your preference. The restaurant serves you whatever you want. I recommend adding 1 bottle of soju. It goes very well with fresh seafood. I'm sure you will have the best meal you could ever have at this fish market. The best things to do there is wander around each stall and enjoy seeing the tanks full of various kinds of sea creatures such as octopus, squid, clams, salmon, mackerel, mussels, and more. Have you been to Insadong? If so, please tell us about it. Insadong is well known as a traditional street to both locals and foreigners. This area is a mixture of traditional and modern Korean culture. All the road and shop signs are written in Korean, even foreign brands. Traditional tea houses, antique shops, and souvenir shops are connected to each other via alleys of varying size. Insadong is considered a unique place that shows the cultural history of the nation. Insadong has various famous antique shops, galleries, and traditional stationery shops. You can get traditional shaped postcards and delicious street food, as well as many souvenirs. I highly recommend going to Insadong if you want to feel an authentic traditional Korean atmosphere and buy Korean-style souvenirs. There's also a well-known temple in Insadong named Jogesa. K-pop is very popular. Where can you go in Seoul to learn more about K-pop? K-pop is attracting worldwide attention to Korea. The spread of Korean culture internationally through K-pop is called Hallyu Wave. The number of K-pop fans coming to Korea is increasing tremendously every year. If you would like to visit places where you can experience Hallyu, Incheon International Airport opened the Hallyu Digital Experience Zone with the theme Let's Go Travel with Junki-song. Using VR devices, the latest holograph technology displays the celebrity Junki-song on a plane. People feel that they are actually together with him. This kind of experience can promote not only Hallyu, but also the sponsoring airline and the airport itself. There used to be SM Town, one of the greatest K-pop entertainment agencies, at COEX Artium. There was a souvenir shop at a K-pop cafe and a theater where people can experience and enjoy K-pop. A lot of photo zones and props of celebrities and souvenirs of celebrities were popular among K-pop fans from all around the world. Now, they are building a new SM Town in Changwon. It is almost double the size of the previous COEX Artium-based town. It is expected that this new giant Hallyu Convention Center will play a key role in spreading K-pop culture throughout the world. Tell us the historical differences between Dongdaemun and Namdaemun. There are 4 major gates from the old Seoul fortress wall, which surrounded the city during the Joseon dynasty. 2 of these are Dongdaemun and Namdaemun. Dongdaemun, which literally means Great East Gate, is also known as Hungin-jimun. It is regarded as a major landmark representing central Seoul. It was built by the first king of the Joseon dynasty, King Taejo. Because of its age, it has been restored many times, but still demonstrates the architectural style of the Joseon period. In the area surrounding this gate, you can find Dongdaemun Market, which is the largest shopping center in Korea. Many fashion and cultural events take place every day, and it is a well-known tourist attraction for foreigners and locals. Another gate is Namdaemun. Although it is better known by Koreans as Seungnaemun, which means Gate of Exalted Ceremonies. Namdaemun is now designated as the first national treasure of Korea. Like Dongdaemun, it was also built by the first king of Joseon, King Taejo. On the 10th of February 2008, a fire broke out at Namdaemun after a disgruntled citizen set it ablaze. Before this incident, Namdaemun was the oldest wooden structure in Seoul. The government tried hard to restore it exactly as it was, and the project was completed successfully. Now we can see the new Namdaemun. Could you tell us the history of Seoul? Before I start, I have a tour spot that comes to mind where people can experience the history of Seoul. I'm talking about the Seoul Museum of History in Jongmyo, and it is free to enter. The museum is divided into 4 sections: the Joseon capital, the capital of the Daehan Empire, Seoul under Japanese control, and period of rapid growth Seoul. The reason I introduced this museum is because it accurately shows the history and development of Seoul. Based on these 4 sections in the museum, I am going to briefly tell you the history of Seoul. Since the first king of Joseon, King Taejo, Seoul became the royal capital city of Korea. Back then, Seoul was called Hanyang. In the middle of the 19th century, Gyeongbokgung Palace was reconstructed after being destroyed during the Japanese invasion when French warships appeared in the Han River. This led the Korean people to wonder about their future. Western ideas also started to spread in Korea. This was the period when the Joseon dynasty was transforming into the Daehan Empire. Seoul was slowly changing into a mixture of East Asian tradition and Western innovation. After the Japanese annexation, Seoul became the headquarters of the Japanese colonial government. Japan modernized the Korean capital quickly until independence in 1945, when Korea became a sovereign state again. However, the Korean War broke out in 1950, and the city ended up in ruins. So the Korean government began to develop its industrial and economic industry rapidly. It was so successful that this period is now known as the Miracle on the Han River. What is Special Tourist Zone? Where are they? What is required to be designated as an STZ? There are a lot of special tourist zones in Korea. In Seoul, there are 5 STZs: Itaewon, Myeongdong, Namdaemun, Bukchang area, Dongdaemun Fashion Town, Dongno Jongge, Jamsil, and the Trade Tower area. To be designated as a special tourist zone, there are 4 criteria that must be met. The number of foreign visitors should be over 100,000. For Seoul Special City, it is over 500,000. According to the standards set by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, the zone should be equipped with tourist information centers, public convenience facilities, and accommodations which satisfy tourist demands. The ratio of land that is not related to tourist activities should not exceed 10%. The areas that meet the 3 criteria above should be in the same district. Next. Tell us about Namsan Tower. Let me tell you about Namsan Tower. It is the first radio wave tower in Korea that was set up to promote broadcasting and tourism. Now it is a big symbol of Seoul and a popular tourist spot for both locals and foreigners. We can reach Namsan Tower by bus or car, but the most popular way is riding a cable car. It is also a popular dating course for couples. Enjoying the view of Seoul from inside the cable car is wonderful. There is also Namsan Library, where you can go to read books and relax. Sometimes they hold exhibitions too. In Namsan, you can find Bongsudae. This is the emergency communication method that Korea used during the Joseon period. When an enemy invaded, they lit a fire on the Bongsudae to deliver a quick warning to the other side of the fortress and surrounding areas. If you go there as a couple, I recommend that you place a padlock with a love message on it. You can see countless padlocks hanging on the wall, which contain happy and loving memories for numerous couples. Tell us about the DMZ and PLZ. PLZ. PLZ stands for Peace Life Zone. There is also a demilitarized zone called the DMZ around the 30th parallel, which divides North and South Korea. The DMZ has been off limits since the Armistice Agreement ending the Korean War, so its ecosystem is well preserved. This unique and natural environment has become famous and is now a popular tourist destination. The PLZ has 7 popular locations for tourists from Gosong in the east to Gwanghwa Island in the west. As you travel around the PLZ, you can sense the tragedy of war in an unpolluted natural environment. DMZ. DMZ is an abbreviation of Demilitarized Zone. It is located around the 30th parallel between North and South Korea. The borders of North and South Korea are 2 kilometers from the designated area clarified on the ceasefire agreement. No military-related facilities can be placed within the 4-kilometer buffer. Also, it is firmly agreed that the wildlife and ecosystems in the DMZ should be preserved as access has been restricted for over 60 years. The DMZ is a great location for dark tourism. People can look back at the tragedy while exploring the DMZ and hope that the future brings peace and unification on the peninsula. What is the scientific value of Sokguram Grotto? Sokguram Grotto is National Treasure number 24, part of the Burugogi Temple Complex. It contains one of the best Buddhist sculptures in the world. It was also designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site along with the Burugogi Temple and was built during the Unified Shilla period. The grotto demonstrates the outstanding architectural skill of the Unified Shilla Kingdom and is the only artificial grotto in the world. It is located high on a mountain. From Sokguram, near the Buddha's perch, we can see the beauty of the sun rising over the sea. It took over 40 years to carve the rough granite to make the stone Buddha. There are several scientific principles that the entire grotto had been extremely well preserved for over 1,200 years. First, the temperature and humidity was controlled naturally. The grotto was built on a spring which gathered the dew from the air. So, the Buddha statue was quite safe from the humidity and moss. Unfortunately, the spring was destroyed by the Japanese, and so it no longer exists. The roof dome of the grotto was made of natural stone and earth, which also helped to control the temperature and humidity. And finally, the arch-shaped ceiling was built sturdily with square stone blocks. Stone wedges were inserted between the blocks to increase its rigidity and strength. Choose and introduce some tourist areas in Andong. Let me tell you some places that you can visit in Andong. Andong is a city that combines tradition, culture, and history together. People have lived in Andong for numerous years and it has formed an integrated folk culture with various cultural items. First, I highly recommend the Hakue Folk Village. This village contains various types of traditional houses dating back to the early Joseon dynasty. You can experience making red pepper paste called gochujang, kimchi, and traditional face mask called Hakue. The Korean folk village Hakue was designated as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. The next place I can recommend is Dosan Confucian Academy. It was built to commemorate Korea's respected and preeminent scholar Yi Hwang, who devoted his life to discipline and educate his students. It was built in 1574, 4 years after he passed away. The beautiful scenery of the river and forest harmonizing together makes you feel relaxed as you walk around Dosan. Andong is famous for jimdak, or steamed chicken. It tastes fantastic. Tell us about Donggung Palace and Woojie Pond. The Woojie Pond at Gyeongju Donggung Palace is an artificial pond from the ancient Shilla period. King Munmu constructed the pond as part of the original palace called Banwolseong. The pond area was used by the crown prince and used for banquets and events to welcome important visitors. It unfortunately fell into disrepair after the collapse of Shilla. It continued to degrade for centuries until a long-term excavation and restoration project finally started in 1975. Many relics such as pottery, roof tiles, figures of Buddha, and jewelry were found, and the waterway system of this artificial pond was also revealed. Its former name is Anapti. But during the excavation, pottery was discovered with the Chinese character Woojie inscribed, which in English means the pond reflecting the moon. So the name Anapti was changed to the current name Donggung Palace and Woojie Pond. There is an Anapti exhibition hall in Gyeongju National Museum displaying over 700 relics. Contrast the Sokka-tap and Tabo-tap pagoda. Both pagodas are located at the Buruguksa Temple in Gyeongju. To reach them, you must cross two bridges, one called Cheongun Bridge and the other Baekgun Bridge. Tabo-tap means pagoda of many treasures and is on the right side, while Sokka-tap pagoda stands opposite of it on the left. These pagodas were built during the Shilla dynasty. Tabo-tap is designated as National Treasure number 20 and illustrated on the back of the Korean 10 coin. Sokka-tap was designated as the 21st National Treasure. The style of both pagodas is contrastive. The design of Sokka-tap is simple and basic, which shows balance, stability, and symmetry. On the other hand, Tabo-tap represents complexity that symbolizes the differences between the celestial and terrestrial worlds. Both are considered remarkable and outstanding traditional structures. They were built by balancing octagonal, rectangular, and circular models in one pagoda design. Tell us about Cheomseongdae, the observatory in Gyeongju. Cheomseongdae is the oldest surviving astronomical observatory in Asia. Cheomseongdae means near the stars palace. It functions as a stargazing tower. It was built during the reign of Queen Seondok to observe the stars and to predict the weather. It was designated as National Treasure number 31 due to the quality of the stone structure and its beautiful design. Its cylindrical or bottle shape is composed of 362 stones with 27 layers of granite, and these 362 stones represent the 362 days in a lunar year. From the top of the Cheomseongdae, astronomers observed the sky and recorded celestial phenomena to map out the constellation in the heavens. It also helped farmers prepare their crops by predicting the changes of the season. Do you know the legend about the Bell of King Seongdok? The Bell of King Seongdok is the largest surviving bell in Korea. It is also known as the Imlay Bell and is now kept in the National Museum of Gyeongju and designated as the 29th National Treasure in Korea. It is said that when the bell rang, the sound could be heard from 40 miles away. The name of the bell, Imlay, comes from an old Shilla word for mommy, and there is a disturbing legend attached to it. It is said that after the bell first rang, there was no sound at all. People tried several more times to ring the bell, but it didn't produce any sound. A while later, a monk had a dream that said if a child was added to the molten metal before the bell was cast, the bell would ring. So, the monk took a child and threw her into the metal. Then, after the bell was cast again, it rang and made a beautiful sound. Where is Panmuntom? What does JSA stand for? Panmuntom is a village in Paju in the DMZ between South and North Korea. This is where the Korean Armistice Agreement was signed in 1953. It is also called the Truce Village and was where prisoners of war were exchanged in the years following the truce. There was a tragic incident at the Panmuntom in 1976 called the Axe Murder Incident. 2 United States Army officers were killed by North Korean soldiers in the Joint Security Area in the DMZ. The UN forces trimmed a big poplar tree that partially blocked the view of their command posts. The 2 were killed and assaulted by North Korean soldiers in a surprise attack who claimed that the tree was planted by Kim Il-sung. The U.S. responded 3 days later by cutting the tree down with a show of force to intimidate North Korean soldiers. The Joint Security Area is part of the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, in Korea. The DMZ is the line that has marked the border of South and North Korea since the ceasefire. The JSA is an area where both North and South Korea's militaries can enter and use during discussions between the 2 countries. A popular movie named JSA was filmed at this location, which resulted in an increased interest among tourists. A typical day tour of the JSA includes exploring the 3rd infiltration tunnel and the Dora train station and observatory. There are 5 main palaces in Seoul. Explain each of them. Tell me briefly about Gyeongbokgung and Gwanghwamun. Constructed in 1394, Gyeongbokgung was the central building for the government during the Joseon dynasty which ruled Korea from 1392 to 1910. It is the most magnificent palace from the 500-year-long Joseon dynasty. The name of the palace in English is A Palace of Shining Happiness. It was damaged during the Japanese colonial occupation, but restoration work began and created what we see today. As you enter the palace, the first thing you see is Gunjeongjong. It is a building used by the king for appointments with officials and foreign visitors. It was therefore designed as an impressive formal hall to greet foreign envoys. There are 3 gates used to reach Gunjeongjeon Hall. One is Gwanghwamun, and others are Hungniemun near the ticket office and Gunjeongmun right in front of Gunjeongjeon. Gunjeongjeon was burnt down during the Imjin War in 1592 and rebuilt later. The next building you can see is Gyeonghwaeru. This pavilion, built on the pond west of Gangneungjeon, was where the king threw feasts for foreign envoys for his court officials. The name means that the king is capable of handling national affairs only when he has the right people around him. It was used on joyous occasions. It is notable for its architectural excellence. As you walk through the yard in the back, you can see Gangwonjeon. This is also a pavilion constructed on artificial islets with a beautiful bridge. It is awe-inspiring to take a walk here like a king. There is also a changing of guard ceremony that takes place every day at the front gate. Gwanghwamun is the main and largest gate of the Gyeongbokgung Palace in Jongno-gu, Seoul, South Korea. It is one of the biggest landmarks of Seoul and keeps the spirit of Korea from the Joseon dynasty. Gwanghwamun was built in 1395 as the main gate of Gyeongbokgung Palace. You can see the statue of King Sejong and Admiral Yi in Gwanghwamun Square. Tell me briefly about Chengdukung. Chengdukung is a major palace in Jongno-gu near Gyeongbok Palace. After Gyeongbokgung was destroyed during the Imjin War, it served as the second major palace for 270 years. This palace is harmonized with the beauty of nature, and it represents the importance of human respect towards the environment. Thus, Chengdukgung was designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The main gate's name is Donghwamun and Injeongjeon Hall in the throne room. The giant main gate's name is Donghwamun and Injeongjeon Hall, which is in the throne room. Seongjeongjeon Hall was used by officials to meet the king, and Hwaejangdang Hall used to be the king's bedroom but became another place for officials to meet the king. The Daejeon Hall is where the queen stayed. There's a beautiful garden, Piwon, with 300 years worth of history. There's also Buyongjeon Pavilion, which was used for celebrations, and Onggyucheon Stream, which is an important part of the garden. That is where the king and officials enjoyed drinking from floating wine cups and wrote poetry. A poem written by Sukjeong is inscribed on a boulder. Injangjeon was the main throne hall. Official events including coronations and greeting foreign envoys were usually held there. Seonjangjeon was a throne hall where the king and officials discussed state affairs. Daejeon is a throne hall where the king and queen slept, and the princes and princesses were educated. The king slept in the left room and the queen slept in the right. Donghwamun, the main gate of the palace, means that the king's virtue makes people happy and friendly. Jinseonmun means to tell the truth to the king, and citizens could make complaints there. Injeongmun is the gate of Injeongjeong. There are 3 gates there. The king passed through the biggest one in the middle. The civil ministers passed through the right one, and military officials passed through the left. Tell me briefly about Doksugung. Doksugung is one of the 5 royal palaces remaining in Seoul. The name Doksugung holds the meaning of Palace of Virtue and Longevity, which prayed for a long life for King Gojong. In 1592, the Japanese army landed in Busan and invaded all the way to Seoul. This was during the reign of King Seonjo, and he fled to Woojie and stayed there for 1.5 years. When he returned to Seoul, his former residence had been destroyed and there was no place to stay. They used Doksugung, which had previously been used as a residence for the king's relatives. Gwanghae-gun, who succeeded King Seonjo, renamed it Gyeonggung when he was overthrown by King Injo, and the palace was left empty for 270 years. In the late 19th century, after the Korean royal refuge at the Russian legation, King Gojong decided to live at this palace. When he came back from Russia in 1897, he proclaimed Korea an empire. The name of the palace was then changed again to Doksugung. Tell me briefly about Changgyeonggung. Changgyeong Palace was built by King Sejong for his father in the mid-15th century. Its original name was Sugangung. Later, King Seongjong changed the name to Changgyeonggung, and it became the residence of queens. Honghwamun is the main gate, and Myeongjeongjeon Hall is the main building of the palace. During the Japanese occupation, they built a zoo and botanical garden, planting thousands of cherry blossom trees at Changgyeonggung to undermine the Korean national authority. However, after independence, it was left as a tourist attraction, and then, in 1986, all of the cherry blossoms were removed and replaced with pine, maple, and zakova trees. The zoo and botanical gardens were also relocated to what is now called Seoulland. Tell me briefly about Gyeonghui-gung. Gyeonghui-gung is one of the 5 palaces built during the Joseon dynasty. It was first constructed by King Gwanghae and was originally called Gyeongdokgung. But later, during the reign of King Injo, it was renamed Gyeonghui-gung. The main gate of Gyeonghui-gung is Hunghwamun, and the main throne hall, Sungjeongjeon, is now located at Dongguk University. In the 19th century, the palace caught fire twice, and most of it was damaged. It was also destroyed again during the Japanese occupation. By the time the Korean government tried to restore it, only around 30% of the palace could be reconstructed due to the city growth and industrialization. It is designated as Historic Site number 271. On the other hand, the buildings in Chengdukung Palace are built out asymmetrically, harmonizing with the surrounding nature. This is one of the reasons it was designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Gyeongbokgung was severely damaged many times in the past due to historical tragedies, but Chengdukgung has stayed well preserved. During the Imjin War in 1592, Gyeongbokgung was destroyed. So, Chengdukgung became the main palace for the rest of the Joseon period. Doksugung served as an important palace in the late Joseon period. Dosan started to accept foreign cultures and became influenced by them. Doksugung has both traditional and Western-style buildings, such as Sokjojeon. Doksugung shows the history of the late Joseon dynasty. Changgyeonggung's original name was Sugangung. It was built by King Sejong for his father, Taejong of the Joseon dynasty. Later, King Seongjong repaired and modified it to be used as the queen's residence and renamed it Changgyeonggung. The main hall of Changgyeonggun is Myeongjeongjeon, and its main gate is Heunghwamun. During the Japanese colonial period, Japan turned it into a zoo and planted a botanical garden. But it has now been restored to its original design. Jongmyo Shrine and Jereak, royal ancestral rituals in Jongmyo Shrine and its music. Jongmyo Shrine is a national ceremony which was held for worshipping Joseon's deceased kings and queens at the Jongmyo Shrine. Jongmyo Shrine is the place where the memorial tablets are preserved. Jongmyo Jereak is an ancient court music performed for the Jongmyo Jere ritual together with dancing and singing. The Jere's dance is called Ilmu, performed by a group of 64 women wearing purple clothes. Traditional Korean instruments such as gongs, lutes, zithers, bells, and flutes were used to play this music. The ritual is regarded as an important ceremony for praying for the eternal peace of spirits. The ritual was performed once a year on the first Sunday in May and conducted by descendants of the royal family. Jongmyo Jere and Jereak were selected as the first of Korea's intangible cultural heritage of humanity by UNESCO in 2001. Pansori epic chant, a traditional musical storytelling. First, I will tell the meaning of the term pansori. Pan means a place where people get together. Sori means song or sound. Pansori is one of the most prominent remaining genres among Korea's traditional music. Pansori is one of the most prominent remaining genres among Korean traditional music. This music is performed by one vocalist with the drummer. Vocalist is called Sorikum, and drummer is called Gosu. Gosu plays the drum while the vocalist sings. Pansori has a very unique singing technique with distinct rhythms and sounds. We can see the life and emotions of both commoners and aristocrats through the lyrics of Pansori. Pansori originated from the 17th century and originated from shamans' narrative songs. It was proclaimed as UNESCO's Intangible Heritage of Humanity in 2003. Yongsanjae is a Korean Buddhist ceremony for the deceased to guide their souls to paradise. It was created during the Shilla dynasty when Buddhism was introduced in Korea. The procedures of performing this ritual are so complicated that it takes almost 4 days to complete. Bompe is a sort of dance and song among Buddhists, and it plays a crucial role in this ritual. This ritual delivers Buddhism as a form of art and inherits the value of Buddha's Lotus Sutra. Yongsanjae is conducted in temples in Korea and admires the Buddha, his words, and monks. It was placed on the list of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2009. Kagu, lyric song cycles accompanied by an orchestra. Kagu is a Korean traditional vocal music that consists of traditional poetry by playing string zither and percussion instruments. Most gaguk is quite slow. Nowadays, gaguk follows faster rhythms and tempos than it did before, but it still contains peaceful and slow tunes. Gaguk used to be sung by aristocrats, but commoners also started to enjoy it. It takes quite a long time to acquire the skills to sing gaguk, so it is passed down by practitioners as a form of heritage training. To make the orchestra complete, traditional Korean zithers such as gongmungo and kayagum, bamboo flutes, piri, and taegu. It was added to the list of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2010. Weaving of mosi, fine rami, in the Hansan region. Hansan is the name of the region located in Chungcheong province in Korea. The area, Hansan, has fertile land and sea winds, which is the perfect environment to plant and harvest rami. Middle-aged women in Hansan weave ramis as a women-led business and pass down their techniques and experiences to their daughters. Clothes made with rami are cool on a hot and humid summer. Using rami, we can make various clothing like dress suits and morning garments. The price can vary from high to low depending on the skills of the weaver, design, and quality. People in one community gathered and worked together to weave rami, which naturally led to stronger relationships being built with each other. These days, there are around 500 people who engage in weaving rami in the community. It was placed on the list of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2011. Techyun, a traditional Korean martial arts. Techyun is a traditional Korean martial art using rhythmic and gentle dance-like movement against the opponent. It contains both offensive and defensive skills, focusing on how to dominate an opponent without any damage. The role of the feet is as important as hands in Techyun. There's a Techyun association in Korea teaching and promoting Techyun throughout the world with around 50 Techyun practitioners. People practice this as a daily hobby for their health. It was added to the list of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2011. Arirang, lyrical folk song in the Republic of Korea. Arirang is a Korean folk song. It is so famous that it's even considered as an unofficial national anthem of Korea. The typical lyrics are Arirang, Arirang, Arario, crossing over Arirang Pass. Deer who abandon me shall not walk even 10 before his or her feet hurt. The original Arirang is known as Jongsan Arirang from Gangwon Province, which has been sung by people for over 600 years. Other forms of famous Arirang is Bilyang from Gyeongsang Province and Chindo from Jeolla Province. Arirang can be created by anyone putting their emotion in according to their regional and historical variations. Arirang is also used in many subjects like art, media, musicals, literature, and drama. The rhythm is so addictive and evocative that it brings communication and unity among Korean people. It was selected as one of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2012. Kimjang, making and sharing kimchi. Kimchi is a Korean traditional fermented vegetable seasoned with spices. Most Koreans eat this almost every day, and it can almost represent the identity of a Korean. Making kimchi is called kimjang in Korean. Families gather together in autumn every year to make kimchi, and doing this together enhances family cooperation and harmony. Kimchi culture also differs from region to region, and the methods of making kimchi is a family tradition that is passed from mother-in-law to daughter-in-law. In autumn, when the kimjang season comes, the whole family makes and shares large amounts of kimchi. It is enough to last through the piercing winter. Kimchi was put on the list of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2013. Nongak, community band music, dance, and rituals in the Republic of Korea. Nongak is literally farmers' music. The Cultural Heritage Administration has distinguished 5 regional nongak in Korea so far: Jinju, Pyeongtaek, Iri, Gangneung, and Imsil Bilbong Nongak. There are various reasons for singing nongak, like praying to the gods, rich harvests, and chasing evil spirits away. Farmers perform music, dance, acrobatics, and drama. Nongak helps to enhance unity and cooperation in the community and establishes a sense of shared identity among community members. Its style differed from each village in terms of performance style, costumes, and rhythms. It was placed on the list of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2014. Tugging rituals and games. This ritual has 2 teams standing on the west and east side and pulling ropes from each side. The purpose of doing this is praying for abundant harvest and prosperity. This ritual also functions as building a strong bond within the community and creating solidarity. Normally, this game was played in front of a village's shrine after holding ritual ceremonies for their local god. Elder people in villages encourage younger generations to participate in tugging to strengthen unity and identity of its group members. It was added to the list of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2015. Culture of Jeju Henyo, women divers. In Jeju, there are women who go diving nearly 10 meters under the sea without any oxygen tanks or other devices to catch shellfish, abalone, and etc. These women divers are called Henyo. Before they dive, they pray for safety and a plentiful catch.
Again.
Before they dive, they pray for safety and a plentiful catch. This is a family and village business. The skill is passed down to younger generations through an organization known as Henyo Association. Henyo represents the spirit, culture, and character of Jeju Islands. It was inscribed on the list of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2016. Hunmin Jeongum Manuscript. The document was registered in 1997 in UNESCO's Memory of the World. Hunmin Jeongum means the proper sounds for the instruction of the people, and is the former name of the Korean alphabet Hangul. This manuscript was published in 1446 with the new Korean alphabet by King Sejong of the Joseon dynasty, who had ordered the development of Hangul in 1443. Thanks to his great achievements, the Korean people could read and write their own alphabet easily. It also explains how the consonants and vowels were created and formed based on the position of the human vocal organs. Now, it is kept in the Kansong Museum and is still considered a unique and outstanding invention. The Annals of the Joseon Dynasty. The Annals of the Joseon Dynasty. This is the collection of the history of the Joseon Dynasty from the reign of King Taejo, who was the founder of Joseon, to the reign of King Cheoljong. It was registered in 1997 as UNESCO's Memory of the World. Here are several reasons why it is acknowledged as a World Heritage. This is one of the longest records kept out of the world's dynasties. If you make a pile of all the books, it is almost the same height as a 12-story building. The Annals are a priceless collection of historical records containing detailed information about various aspects of the Joseon dynasty's society, economics, lifestyle, and culture. The Annals are considered very reliable and objective, as even Joseon's kings were not allowed to read the records. And the Annals had several crises that could have led to its loss, but it ended up surviving and being well preserved for a long time. Several copies of the Annals were made, and each were preserved in the different locations. But during the Imjin War, all the locations were burnt down except for the one preserved in Jeonju. Getting through a lot of crises in the past, Korea's ancestors kept them until the end, and nowadays we can easily read this online. Here's the website. If we go to Jeonju Hanok village, we can visit Gyeonggi-jeon, where the Annals had once been kept. This place is a good example of exploring Korea's history with pride. Movable metal type printing for Buddhist texts. The oldest surviving book printed using movable metal type was published during the Goryeo dynasty. It is known as the Jikji Simchaeyeol or Jikji Simgyeong, and it describes the essentials of Zen Buddhism. It was used as a study book for monks to perform and study. It was developed 78 years earlier than Gutenberg made in Germany in the middle of the 15th century. It was printed in 1377 at Heungdoksa Temple in Cheongju. Dr. Park Byung-sun, who had worked as a researcher in the France National Library, discovered the lost Jikji there and proved the fact that it is the oldest surviving book printed using movable metal type. Only the lower volumes of Jikji exist and are still preserved in the French National Museum. With her great achievement, Korea's heritage was recognized internationally and registered in 2001 as a UNESCO Memory of the World. Korea's printing technique started with woodblock printing in the Unified Shilla period, when the oldest existing book, printed using movable wood blocks, was created.
Okay. 시작.
승정원 일기, The Diaries of the Royal Secretariat. The Sungjongwon Ilgi is a collection of authentic historic records and state secrets from the Joseon dynasty during the reign of first King Taejo until the 27th King Sunjong. There are vast amounts of detailed 288-year-old records of the court's daily events and official schedules of the court during the Joseon dynasty written by royal secretariats. It contains the court's daily schedules, national routines, king and queen's appointments, administrative affairs, and etc. It shows how Western cultures and Catholicism just started to influence Joseon Confucian society in the 19th century. The size of this document is so abundant that it was estimated to take almost 100 years for a human to translate. The good news is that artificial intelligence that translates Hanja, Chinese characters, into Hangul is being developed and upgraded. So it will shorten the huge amount of time needed to translate the diary of Sunjongwon. Printing woodblocks of the Tripitaka Korean and miscellaneous Buddhist scriptures. Registered in 2001 in UNESCO's Memory of the World, the Buddhist Pali Canon, known as the Tripitaka, was carved onto more than 80,000 wooden printing blocks. It was made during the Goryeo period and called the Palman Daejangyeong, which means the 80,000 Tripitaka. This collection of wooden blocks is stored at Haeinsa Temple in Hapcheon. The people of Goryeo began to make the Tripitaka for 15 years in a desperate attempt to receive the Buddha's blessing and help in the fight against the Mongolian invasions at that time. These printing blocks are now considered the best example of publishing technology from that period. Okay. The Royal Protocols of the Joseon Dynasty. The Uigwe is a collection of royal protocols from the Joseon Dynasty which lasted from 1392 to 1910. This book contains official recordings of court events such as royal weddings, the investiture of queens and crown princes, funerals, royal tomb structures, and etc. As the contents required delicate and detailed descriptions, it had to be recorded with drawings. The early era of Joseon's record were damaged during the Imjin War, so the remaining content are from post-Imjin War. There was an incident in 1866 when French troops attacked Gwanghwa-do and took the Uigwe to France. Long after, Dr. Byung-sun Park discovered it at the French National Library, and the request for returning it to Korea was proceeded. Donggui Bogam, Principles and Practice of Eastern Medicine. The Donggui Bogam is a medical book written by Heo-jun during the Joseon Dynasty. It is an encyclopedia of the principles and practice of Eastern medicine, and was written in a simple and easy way so that everyone can understand its teachings. This book contains medical knowledge and techniques concerning medicine, herbs, and food for diseases that occurred during that period. These outstanding records were added to UNESCO's Memory of the World in 2009. 일상록, Records of Daily Reflections. 일상록 is a collection of the king's diaries started by King Jongjo, the 22nd king of the Joseon dynasty. The books record the words and behaviors of Joseon's kings for 150 years from the reign of King Jongjo to Sunjong, the Emperor Yunghui. It is now kept in Gyeonggak at Seoul National University. Sentences that start with I am are found in this document instead of starting with king is, because it is in a diary format. Jongjo first wrote it by himself until his 5th year of reign, and then officials took over recording it for objectivity and reliability. This collection contains both his personal diary about the king's activities and a record of the state affairs of Joseon. Unlike other court documents, it contains the king's self-reflection on his governing and thought for his people, which made it more valuable and precious. Human rights documentary Heritage 1980 archives for the May 18th democratic uprising against the military regime in Gwangju, Republic of Korea. The May 18th Gwangju uprising took place in 1980 when the enraged people of Gwangju protested passionately against the government and the imposition of martial law. It played an important role in opening the way to democracy in Korea, and it also influenced other East Asian countries to move forward towards democracy, such as the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. During the protests, many tragedies occurred, but their sacrifice served the purpose of spreading the message nationwide and internationally. The archives of this important event were registered in 2011 as a UNESCO Memory of the World. Nangjung Ilgi, War Diary of Admiral Yi Sun-shin. The Nangjung Ilgi is the handwritten journal of Admiral Yi Sun-shin from 1545 to 1598. It consists of 7 volumes and is designated as National Treasure number 76. Admiral Yi is a highly respected hero during the Japanese invasion as a sea battle commander. He wrote in detail about daily combat along with his personal views and feelings. Even weather descriptions are well recorded. This war diary has also been read by many Westerners while researching about sea battles. This collection was registered in 2013 in UNESCO's Memory of the World. Archives of Semae Undong, the New Community Movement. It was registered in 2013 in UNESCO's Memory of the World. Semae Undong was active from 1970 to 1979 in Korea, and this archive contains presidential speeches, government papers, manuals, video clips, and photographs that are all related to the new community movement. This movement played a crucial role in helping Korea to rapidly grow into a major economic industry from one of the world's poorest developing countries. Semae Undong is exported as a benchmarking model. Public officials and village leaders from many countries still visit Korea to learn how Korea achieved its unprecedented transformation. Confucian printing woodblocks in Korea. Confucian woodblock prints consist of more than 60,000 hand-carved blocks to write books during the Joseon dynasty. They were registered in 2015 as a UNESCO Memory of the World and are now stored at the Advanced Center for Korean Studies. Compared to the Tripitaka Koreana, Confucian printed books were made by scholars and handed down to their descendants. They discovered a wide range of topics such as history, economy, and arts. But the common theme was always Confucian morality. The woodblocks were first created to enable scholars to engage with each other and exchange ideas. Question 13. The archives of the KBS Special Live Broadcast Finding Dispersed Families. It was registered in 2015 in UNESCO's Memory of the World. The archives of the KBS Special Live Broadcast Finding Dispersed Families contain more than 20,000 recordings of live broadcasts. The program achieved great recognition in both Korea and abroad because of its focus on the deep sorrow felt by dispersed families. This program shows how terrible war is and how human lives are destroyed both in Korea and all over the world. International viewers showed deep sympathy and understanding towards the dispersed families. The program was considered a big humanitarian contribution and named the most humanitarian program by journalists at the 6th World Media Conference. The National Debt Redemption Movement. The National Debt Redemption Movement was a movement initiated by the people of the Korean Empire to repay their country's debt through collective individual donations. After the Japan-Korea Treaty in 1905, Japan offered a large amount of loans to our government as a part of their colonization policy. Sosangdon started it in Daegu, and national debt at that time was around 13 million won. National Debt Redemption Movement was started in Daegu, Gwangunsa, on January 29, 1907. They suggested paying off 13 million won to Japan through an anti-smoking campaign. Especially the women took the leading role in raising funds. Women sold jewelry to supplement their living expenses. The movement failed under Japanese oppression. Although we didn't achieve our goal, we saw the hope for independence desired by people living in the Dark Ages. In 1997, the gold collection movement reappeared as the second national debt redemption movement. It is a valuable asset to our heritage, and it's worth sharing with the rest of the world. Royal Seal and Investiture Book Collection of the Joseon Dynasty. It is a collection of royal seals and investiture books made for the kings and queens of Joseon. It was produced from the beginning of Joseon until the very end of the dynasty, which lasted around 570 years. The seals and books were given to the kings and queens to commemorate their important occasions and ceremonies like coronation and inauguration of official titles. The different names and titles were engraved into the seal, and the investiture books also provided the names and descriptions of the ceremonial events. It has great value because it reflects the changes in time through its content, authors, and sentence structure. Documents on Joseon Dongshinsa. The history of peace building and cultural exchanges between Korea and Japan from the 17th to 19th century. The Joseon Dongshinsa were ambassadors sent occasionally by the Joseon dynasty of Korea to Japan about 12 times after the Imjin War from 1607 to 1811. Korea and Japan worked together to register this heritage, which is the first successful case. Dongshin means sharing faith. Dongshinsa visited Japan when there were special occasions or a new succession to the throne and delivered the king's credentials. Diplomatic documents, travel records, and cultural exchange records are written in the documents. Through regular and consistent visits, Korea and Japan again established diplomatic relations. From Hanyang to Edo, it took more than 6 months for them to travel, and they could sing and drink with Japanese officials on the road. Dongshinsa Parade had always received a big welcome and applause by the Japanese, and it influenced Korea and Japan's diplomatic relations in a positive way. If you want to know more details about it, I recommend that you visit the Historical Museum of Joseon Dongshinsa in Busan.